Bluetooth mode.
Stand on my toes. Okay. Does it make any difference?
No, yes.
Not on.
It's on. It's full blast.
It is on. Okay, is it just me? Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll speak to the wall. Thank you everybody for coming this afternoon. There's just a few formalities. Please turn off your cell phones just for Claudette to be able to continue her whole demonstration for us. Bathrooms are at the church building through the door on the right to the right. We can use the bathrooms. Okay, I've already forgotten. Go back to my notes. Bathroom cell phones, new members. If we've got a lot of new members or participating or maybe wanting to become new members this afternoon, please see Wendy. We're more than welcome to have you on board and we'd love to have you at our next meetings. There will be tea and coffee and biscuits afterwards. We're going to get through at least an hour and a half with Claudette and then see if we can get time for tea or coffee. I see with all the questions that we've already been given, she's going to have her hands full. And then Katinka and Marvelous Orchids have given us table time with stuff for sale afterwards. Both vendors are happy to take credit cards or cash, whichever is your preference. Wendy, thank you for being my wing girl. And thanks to everybody else for being here. This is Claudette, by the way. That's what I was supposed to say. This is Claudette from Marvelous Orchids.
I don't know, I'll speak loud. I normally speak loud. Can you guys hear me at the back? Because I tend to move backwards and forwards. From our side, from Marvelous Orchid side, we are here in Boksburg, by the way. We would just like to say a very, very warm welcome and thank you for the invitation. I have to jump right in because I know there's 112 questions. So I've already realized that I will have to make my phalaenopsis slightly smaller because of all the questions I have on some of the other species. Let me get as far as possible with the talk about phalaenopsis and then I'm going to start taking questions. I know there's a lot of eager questions that's been asked and that I need to answer. So today we're dealing with a phalaenopsis, and a phalaenopsis is the plant that you see here. This is currently the most propagated plant on earth, except for a poinsettia over Christmas times. There's currently more phalaenopsis plants on earth in people's houses, and I exclude growers, than what there's birds and people. And the sad thing is that we kill them all the time. And I'm going to be really honest with you, this is the drama queen of the orchid world. But we're going to talk about this just now. I just want to just give you a little bit of a very brief history because it's actually quite incredible. So this plant was discovered in 1825. By a doctor that he was a botanist in Java, which is Indonesia. And what it is, he walked into the jungle and he turned around and he thought he saw moths or butterflies. And it wasn't, it was a phalaenopsis. And this is where the name comes from as well. Phaleo means moth, and the opsis means like. So it's like a moth. So this is where they come from. So we need to understand, and I'm not going to spend too much because I would love to tell you all about orchid hunters and those, but I leave that for you to go and read up about it. It's fascinating. But if we think about when this plant was originally discovered, next year, it's basically 200 years. And how far we've come with one orchid species. So just some interesting facts. What is the most, do you guys know what is the orchid that is cultivated the most for food? Correct, vanilla. So your vanilla is also an orchid, and they actually grow because it's a creeper. If you can get hold of them, always remember if you want to propagate them yourself, you need two. But let's start on these guys. So where do they grow? And the whole idea is if we can understand where they grow, it's easier for you at home to simulate those. So the first thing is you get 3 different types of orchids. You get an orchid that is an epiphyte. That means I cling to a tree. I am not a parasite. I don't take any way from the tree. It is just my home. Then you get what we call lithophytes. They grow on rocks. Now, a lot of the dendrobiums, especially because they come from China, they actually like sitting on rocks. But there's a lot of species. And your other one that everybody knows, your cymbidium over here, they are terrestrial. That means I grow in ground, or I grow in soil. But I use the word soil very lightly. I'm going to have lots of questions about that. We'll deal with that. So where do I grow? So these guys come from the Far East. Everybody knows when you go to Hong Kong, you go to Thailand, you go to those places, they are everywhere. And they've become, like I said, one of the biggest crops that we have at the moment. They grow high in the jungle. A lot of our other orchids grow in the middle or even on ground level. And this is very important to remember. I grow high in the trees. And I don't know, those of you that's got these babies at home, how many of you have them and they do this? Do you know why? Because in the jungle I grow like this. I'm trying to protect myself. So we have to stake them and keep them upright. This is your crown. This. I'm not going to get very botanical. You all can come afterwards if you want the botanical names. This is your crown. And everything they do in the jungle, as you can imagine, when that water comes rushing past, it is to protect the crown, because if the water sits in there, it will rot. So this is why I grow like this. So if we grow them at home, we have to stake them and support them. But this is why they keep on feeling like they're topping over. And yes, I still have a plant that's got a soup ladle on the one side, because it's got a flowering stem at the moment and it keeps on wanting to fall over. So, but I will talk to you when we do the repotting demonstration, how important it is to put your weight at the bottom of your pot. So I grow high up in the jungle. What do I get in the jungle? So because I'm high up, I get a lot of light, but I don't get sun. That dapple light that you get, that flickering, that's what they want, as far as possible. The other thing is, I get a lot of water. The water comes rushing past. Remember, I cling on a tree. Now, the interesting thing is that people don't know, and this is my old joke. If you like to water plants, and you have an orchid and you like to water them, please get a fern. When we look at the root structure of a Phalaenopsis under a microscope, if you're not an expert, you're going to think they're the same. The root structure, cells, looks like a cactus. The cactus and the root structure of this is made to open up when there's water and shut down when there's no water. So when we constantly feed it, and those of you that's done repotting, you've seen those little stringy bits. That strings that you see is actually where the cell structure has imploded. Your actual root has rotten away. So the one thing, because we see these plants as tropical plants, we overwater. They don't need as much water, and you're all going to be shocked now. Currently, my Phalaenopsis schedule, and this is, I say schedule in brackets, and we're going to talk about watering now as well, is on 3 weeks. Mine gets water every 3 weeks. They don't need as much water as you think. And when we discuss species in a bit, you're going to see that they don't need as much water as what you think. So the one thing that makes a Phalaenopsis unique is, have you all noticed when you water, the roots go green? It's one of the few plants in the plant kingdom that photosynthesize both from its roots and its leaves. This is why it goes in a clear pot. None of your other species has got that. So this makes them unique. And again, the questions are going to come, but I've got a beautiful decorative pot. So there's a story. And when we grow orchids, there's a place to grow and a place to show. So by all means, enjoy your decorative pot, but the day that you water, allow your plant to stand outside so that it can do what it's supposed to do for its well-being. We're going to talk about that in a bit as well. So the one thing that I'm going to start with, and I can't say this enough, is about light. So light is, currently our sun is so weak. So normally I would never recommend you to put your plant in the sun, but it can handle that little bit of morning sun. When I lived in the UK, everybody used to grow them behind net curtains. So because there wasn't enough sun in the UK, yeah, we've got all the light in the world. So anywhere you can give your plant, that's going to give it as much light as possible. And you'll see those that are successful at getting them to rebloom is that place on top of the fridge or at the front door where you maybe got a nice entrance or even a coffee table. So this is really important, is give it as much as possible light, but no sun. The biggest problem that I see when we do repotting is plants which a lot of times people let when they go on holiday, and we're going to talk about how you deal with your plants when you go on holiday as well, is people make the mistake, somebody looks after your plant and think they need sun and they move them. And what they don't understand, and I'm sure all of you have seen those plants, the cell structure inside, there's like a filament that sits on top of this leaf. It almost acts like a magnifying glass. So when you go and put your plant and it gets that harsh afternoon sun, and somebody asked me a question which I will answer now, it basically acts like a magnifying glass, and that's what you will see, sun damage. It will actually, it has got the capacity to actually burn a hole through your leaf. Those big things, and it normally becomes brown and ugly. So while we talk about leaves, please don't remove your leaves. If they look ugly to you, please don't remove them. So to explain, people don't understand, my plant is not blooming. Then they bring the plant to me and it's got 2 leaves left. This plant, in layman's terms, a marathon runner needs about 4,000 calories a day. That's what this plant needs to bloom. It takes an extraordinary amount of energy that it needs to create to put out that show. And you guys know how long Phalaenopsis can bloom. My record is 9 months. But it just keeps going and keeps going. If it's got the right circumstances, it will keep going. But on average, it's 2-3 months. I mean, even a rose bush, although they will keep on putting out, your normal garden plants doesn't bloom for that long, and this is why it's such a popular plant. I mean, I know there's plants that bloom for a long time, but you guys know what I mean. So this is your most important thing. You have to protect even 10-15 minutes of sun. And the problem is, damage to your plant can take a long time to show. And the reverse is also, it takes a long time to recover. I've seen plants that in March we had one of the hottest Marches on record, where plants got damaged. The damage is no show because now the plant got cold. So this is the problem. So it's very seldom that you get to your plant one morning and say, oh, what's happening to my plant? Whatever happened there happened a while ago. So it takes a long time to show the damage. But unfortunately, this drama queen can throw a tantrum for a couple of years before she blooms again, if she struggled. But you understand why, because I have to grow the leaves again. And there's a loose rule, doesn't always work, but I normally need 4 to 5 leaves to be able to bloom, because I need that energy to be able to do what I need to do. Right, so is there a season? No. Because we grow them, and they and especially in Europe where they don't have enough light, everything gets controlled. Their water, their humidity, their light. So that's why you can get plants right through the year. Now in the winter you will see sometimes there's just a little bit less blooms on, because they take a little bit longer with the cold to open. But in Europe and in other places in the world, everything to the last drop of humidity is controlled. So there's no time. It's not like our gardens. You can repot at any time. But what I always say, if you've got flowers on and you enjoy your flowers, wait until they finish flowering before you try and repot, because that's when they just wilt. They don't like doing that. If there's a crisis and you can see there's root rot or something, take a photograph and repot. What is important for you? Is it the flowers that are important, or is it important for you to save your plant? And unfortunately, we're in a culture at the moment, and you are all gardeners, so this is why you're here, because you want to save your plants. But we continuously see it's become a throwaway culture. Oh, it's not doing well, let's just throw it away. So hopefully with my advice today, you're going to be able, and I'm going to do a small little demonstration. We're going to break the group in half, and I'm going to show you how I repot. And there's a couple of tricks there. Okay, so I'm almost too scared to say if there's any questions. Is there any questions till now? Yes.
With wind, if you put it outside,
Okay.
will it make wind?
I was getting to that. So air movement around your plants is absolutely crucial. We go back to the jungle. There's a constant breeze. It's got to do as well. Keep in mind that some of your plants, they grow as far as Australia, all the way to the foot of the Himalayas. But because I'm high in the jungle, I've got air movement. And the problem is as well, when we start having big collections, we start putting the plants very close to each other. And a lot of times this is a recipe for disaster. The one way to circumvent problems with viruses is to give it air movement. But here's the seesaw. If you, like now, go tonight and you open a window on your orchid that's busy blooming, on your Phalaenopsis, I guarantee you tomorrow you've got bud blight. All the buds that's standing there will start falling. They do not like sharp increases in temperature or decreases. The worst thing you can do for them is put them by an aircon. They do not survive. It's too cold for them. Our ideal temperature for a Phalaenopsis, and you will be shocked, is between 17 and 27 degrees. They're happy to have those higher temperature, but then we need to increase humidity. And I'm going to talk to you in a little bit about humidity. But to answer your question, this is why people, and you know the story that trees grow better because they need wind. It's a little bit the same with these guys. So that's why if you've got a coffee table with a sliding door, they are so happy. And that's why in summer, mine goes out on my patio. They love it. They absolutely love it. Summer is the ideal temperature. And then while we're talking about temperature, is do not expose your plants. My record is 12 degrees. Then you're going to start seeing horrible black spots, or they almost look like they make concentric rings with a little bit of rot inside. That is, it was too cold. There's a lot of diseases. I will try and touch on some of them as well. So, but again, this is our modern world, and a lot of people are just not very aware. Before I carry on, while we're talking about water, how do you water your orchid? So if they are on your patio or anything like that, or they are in a basket, for those that are lucky enough, that's got space, that's got maybe a holiday home in Natal or in Mpumalanga, it's not a problem. You take a stocking and you tie it to a tree. Unfortunately, we don't have the humidity here. I did a humidity reading last week in my house, and it was 9. These guys like 60 to 70%. But remember what I said in the beginning. We need to understand, I love humidity. I don't like water very much. So how do you do it? So the easiest way, now in summer, it's easier to do it, but I'll give you some tips, is if you have a humidifier. But if you don't, we use something called humidity trays. and I'll explain to you now in detail about it. So it's really, really simple. So what you do is go to pep stores, go to wherever. You can be as creative as you like. And this is the secret of going on holiday. So I'm going to explain to you now. When you water your plant, you get a tray. You get one of these things, and be creative. You can use saucers or very nice bowls. So what you do is you should take your plant, and I don't know if you can see. So what you do is you add water in this up till here. My bottom must not touch the water. Now what people don't understand, your plant, like all plants, and you all will know this, we put plants inside the house for oxygen. These guys are great, and also they're pet friendly. Yay. But at night, I've got something at the bottom of my leaves called stomata. That in our layman's terms is a pore. Those pores are shut in the day. So yes, in summer you can walk around with a mister. In winter you can't do it. It's too cold at the moment to do that. That water is just going to sit there. What happens at night? That stomata open. So what does it do? It takes the CO2 out of the air and it gives you oxygen back. At the same time, it absorbs moisture. And especially things like Cattleya, it's crucial for them to get that higher. So it's a very cheap way. So if you've got your own greenhouse and you grow, and it's how to get the humidity. The guys do it very simple. They get those drums, you know, that we used to make barbecues. Oh, yeah, they call it a braaier. Those ones, they just fill them with water and they put them random in the houses. That helps already. So yes, you can grow them, and just a little tray full of water will already make a difference, and you will be astonished. This morning I filled up all my trays. I filled them up on Monday. So your other option that works really well for those of you that knows hydroponics, hydroponics does one that's about that deep, and it's quite nice. It's about that long. So if you do have a cupboard or a stand or something where you can show them off, you can put them in here. So let's get back to watering. How do I water? I put water in my basin, a bucket, a jug, whatever makes you happy, and I fill it over there. And I let it sit, because the amount of water that it will absorb in that 10 to 20 minutes, when it's really hot, mine will drink for 30 minutes. But here's the warning. You need a well-draining potting medium. You need to make sure that it doesn't sit with, this is my personal pet hate, called moss, because most of us overwater. The plant cannot tolerate it. And because people tend to overwater, and this is why the recommendation is to use bark. And I'm going to show you the different methods that you can use. Okay, so my plant's sitting there. In that water, you put your fertilizer. So let's talk about fertilizing. Fertilizing, I'm not a very big, I don't like the beaded fertilizer that you put in your plant. I've seen too many plants burned. Fertilizer, I really don't mind. What works for you, works for you. I won't interfere. But half strength. A lot of these plants don't have the ability, because they don't get water that often, to rinse the salts. So half strength is your first one. Every other watering that you do is going to be a clean water, to be able to flush out the heavy metals and things like that. So we have done watering. So what water? If you're lucky enough to have reverse osmosis, please go for it. If you are lucky enough that you have big JoJo tanks with rainwater, please go for it. But the biggest problem is that I found, I did a meter reading with the last rains, and I was quite shocked to find out that our rains is quite acidic. It is not like it used to be. So most of us are dependent on Rand water, or whatever it's called in your area. The trick is, if you can, let it just sit for 24 hours. a lot of what is the heavy metals and things dissipate. Your water will get also less with the limescale. So that's a tip. But in general, I'm sorry, I don't have the time at the moment. My tanks are not there yet, nothing is in, so mine gets Joburg water. The other thing is, that's a little tip for you, and it's a nice to have, it does not substitute a feed, is give them tea. So high up in that jungle that I just explained, when that water comes rushing past, it actually picks up the tannins in the bark. So the best way to do it is like mine. I don't know how many orchids you've got, but my collection is growing. So you basically throw a tea bag in the bark, in the bath or in your basin. You don't need to stand there and make it too strong, just a little bit of color. It's a nice to have for your plant. And then you're going to see, talking about nice to have, you don't have to, but I believe in charcoal. Now, you as gardeners would know the advantage of charcoal. Now, you can go to the fish places, you know, the little beads that they use for the fish tanks to clean it out. You can use that as well. But I have found, since I'm back in South Africa, a company called Etosha. So Etosha does the normal braai briquettes. Yes, and I know it's the most expensive, but the nice thing is, and no, I don't work for them. They take all the plants that is invasive in Namibia. And if you drive in Namibia, you will actually see them next to the road. They go get the bushes, they burn them, and then they take those embers and they go take them to the kilns. Now, the advantage is that if you barbecue with them, the ash from Etosha, because it contains no chemicals, there's no, things like paraffin and whatever the other guys has got in. They don't have that. So you can actually use the ashes on your normal garden. So what I do is I take a hammer and in between 2 pieces of newspaper and just break it up. Just break it up for your Phalaenopsis. The advantage is, olden days, even now if your dog gets poisoned, they give them activated charcoal. In the olden days, the same story with us as human, and I think it's still like that. You still get activated charcoal. So you don't need huge pieces. I mean, my pieces are like this. It needs 2 or 3 at the bottom. When you go to your Cymbidium, you can just put 2 or 3 big pieces in. So again, that's a nice to have. But also what it does, this is why I'm mentioning it with water, it's got that advantage that if there is any bugs or heavy metals or something, that will filter it out for you. So that's a sort of a double whammy for very little. And for those of you that don't barbecue, get a friend, buy a bag together. I know they are a bit on the pricey side compared to other charcoals, but really it's worth it. Because if you have to go and buy the garden activated charcoal, it's going to cost you a lot more than just a bag of normal charcoal. Right, so can we talk about, we talked about the humidity, we talked about temperature, we talked about light. Fertilization. So everybody wants to know, what do I use? It's been a battle, and afterwards you can come to me. Those of you that's got contacts in Europe or in England, I'll tell you, there's only one fertilizer that was created specifically for orchid growers. And it was created by scientists and by the different orchid societies. We unfortunately can't get it here. But it's called Rain Mix. If anybody has got a family member, just remember when you bring it back to make sure that the top is sealed. It's got crystals inside and it tends to draw water. So I got back in South Africa with a little lump this size. So I have experimented in the short time that I here. I've been given plants. People has been incredibly kind, because I cried a lot when I had to sell my whole collection on that side. What works? I found organic fertilizer like Guano Boost. I'm sure a lot of you know Guano Boost. It's a good fertilizer. It's a bit whiffy, but the thing is it dissipates quite quickly. But the thing is, you can put it from your fruit tree, your vegetables, you can put it on and you can eat tomorrow. You just rinse it. It's wonderful for to encourage roots to grow. So I've had huge success with this. My other one that I love really is what the lady has bought is potassium sulfate. So those of you that's got plants and you know that your roots are healthy, it's been repotted, it's really everything as tick, but this plant is doing nothing. Potassium sulfate. And again, you can use it on your fruit trees, you can use it on anything in your garden. It's really, really something that you can incorporate. But remember what I said, please half strength. In between each feed, you're gonna give it clean water. It's because these guys store it, and the way that you know, and I'm sure some of you have seen it, chemical burn on your Phalaenopsis is normally on the edges. It makes like either yellow or brown or red, but it's not this red. Have you guys seen some of this on your orchids? Where the new baby leaf that comes out is maroon, or there's maroon on the back. That's not chemical burn, that's not a disease. That is an indicator to my parents. So that means somewhere, and although I can't see the flowers, that I can tell you there's a dark pink or a dark red in it. So it will highlight. So even if it's a yellow, the lip will be pink. So it means one of my forefathers, the genetics is why it makes that pink. But on the other hand, Cymbidium and some of the others, if they get too much sun, they will turn maroon, but it's not this maroon. It becomes a really ugly, you can see there's something wrong with the plant, and that's too much sun. So, but that's on your other species. So don't ever fret when you see a maroon back or you see the new baby leaf. And sometimes when the new roots come out, the point will actually be maroon. That is quite normal. It's just the indication of my color and my forefathers. Right, so I need to make sure that I keep with the time. So we talked about a little bit about air circulation. We talked about fertilization. I don't want to neglect your normal pocon that you get. If you've got it, by all means, use it. It's what we call general fertilizer. But I also encourage you to experiment. If you've got something in your garden that works for you, I get lots of feedback with clients that uses different things, but you don't necessarily with orchids need to use only one. In my case, I use two, and every now and again, sort of once every 6 months, I like to use one of the kelp products. You know, you get kelp pack, you get sea grow, one of those. And there's some people that tells me fish pond water is great. I wouldn't know, I'm not prepared to take the risk. So while we're at this, let's talk about the internet. It is absolutely my pet hate. I'm like a GP that wishes people don't read their symptoms, because there is so much information, and I need to explain to you today. 98% of what you get on the internet is clickbait. They want you to click on it. So the more extravagant. So here's rule number 1. If you cut your plant in half, no, you're not going to have 2 plants. You're going to have 1 plant in 2 pieces. That's dead. And no, they do not like strawberries. And I don't know, the other thing that I've actually seen chemical burn, because the newest thing on the internet is, here's my crown, and I go and I shove a garlic clove in between all of them. It will actually burn through. Please don't do it. As I say, this is not a fruit salad and this is not a stew. It's a plant. And I know but again, I want to say there's some things that's got merit, and you need to be aware that you take the risk. I don't believe in it. So let's talk about banana water. There's merit for banana water because it's potassium. Personally, I prefer this, because then we're going to touch now on diseases and illnesses. What happens when you leave bananas on your counter? You get every muggy, aphid and thing that is, and this is a fact, They can smell that rotting material a mile and a half away. So if you are one of the people that do want to do it, I urge you, cut the banana peel, pour hot water on, let it stand, and then put it through a sieve or something and give it 1 spoon today, and make sure tomorrow is your watering day. Some people do it with onion, all of that. But most of those things, the reason why they work is because your plant needs something. They need potassium, they need sulfur, they need all of that. And again, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bath, but my problem is because we sit with a medium. So for instance, this is our plant that comes from it. It sits in a medium that's already breaking down. Now you introduce bacteria to your plant. So first of all, you make yourself open for viruses, bacterial diseases, but also, hello, here comes the aphids, here comes the lice, here comes the wool lice. And 9 times out of 10, I feel so sorry for these plants, except if you introduce something. But sometimes it's our house plants as well. Palms are the worst culprit, because they're the first one that will get an aphid or a lice or something. And that's why it's so important that when we water our plants that we actually inspect them, because the aphid or the lice or whatever will go straight to your orchid. Why? Because I'm damp. Yay, come lay your eggs here. And it's so difficult to break the cycle. So when you see anything weird on your orchid, for the love that is holy, take the plant and isolate. Don't think I'm going to deal with it tonight. By tonight, you can have 3 or 4 plants. There's some really bad diseases, and I'm going to talk about that now. But what I want to say, when you've got lice, when you've got wool lice, this plant is heaven for them, because it's got this crown and they can go and hide there. And those of you that's had an infestation know how difficult it is. So the one thing I'm going to talk about, my potting kit, this is 70% alcohol. No orchid grower must be without it. This is your first offense. The amazing thing about alcohol is it dissipates quite quickly, but bugs don't like it because they can't breathe. So, and the nice thing is you can spray really deep into that crown, and you don't need to wipe it out or anything. It just evaporates. So every grower should have this. The nice thing is if you've got something like wool lice or other lice or anything, you spray, you wipe, you spray, you wipe. Right, so if the infestation, while we're talking about diseases, lasts, your other best friend is rose care. So rose care is one of the things that's both a pesticide and a fungicide. So and it's gentle enough. How it works, you spray today, you wait 4 days, then you spray again, and then you wait a week. Very, very seldom, if you've done it properly, you should have won the game. And the nice thing is you can do it also preventative, but please don't go crazy. It's still a chemical. So for those of you that are organic growers, neem oil is my favorite one. So my German friends, they are private growers. They've done extensive, he's actually written a paper about neem oil. Please don't use neem oil on your plant. Orchids do not like it. So if you understand that they store salts and things, for some reason, even as big as 1 ml of neem oil on a liter, if the plant gets treated the 2nd or the 3rd time, especially Phalaenopsis and Cattleya, the plant will start dying. So please keep your neem oil for those lovely things in your garden. Please don't use them on orchids. There's a lot of other pesticides, but your local garden center will advise you on that. But from my side, this is my 2 friends, alcohol, because alcohol harms nobody. It sterilizes, it cleans. Well, it depends on how much, but hopefully you're not going to drink this. So, okay, so we've got all of this. Right, so we've dealt with pesticides. I just need to tell you all about possibly the worst two diseases that there is for me personally as a grower in the orchid world. On Phalaenopsis, it's called the Alvina virus. And what I will do is for Charlotte, I'll send her a little note and you guys can get the information from her and you can then Google to your heart's delight. And the way it looks, do you know how a lettuce looked that was in the freezer? And it makes that weird, slimy, see-through. If your Phalaenopsis get it, please don't think you're going to save it. You are going to infect your whole collection. It normally doesn't spread to other houseplants. It's normally orchid specific. Please do me a favor, take the plant and if you can, put it in the bin. And if the bin is too close to your orchids, please go across the road where there's a park and go put it in there. Do not put it in the compost heap. Do not leave it there. And I am that strict with me. The stones that's inside, I get rid of the pot. If you've got a way that you know that you can wash your pot properly and then again sterilize with the alcohol, not the red wine, then that's what you do. Do not take a chance. I get it. I get so many questions asked constantly. Yeah, but I've treated it and I'm going to save it. No, you're not. And the sad thing is about the Alvina virus, there's no signs. You will have the most beautiful blooms on those. You will have the most beautiful other leaves, or the roots will be perfect. It's a viral disease and it normally happens because of too much humidity. And again, like my previous thing, the damage wasn't done 9 times out of 10 in your house. It was done maybe where it was standing or growing or whatever. The other one is on cymbidiums. And this is, I can't stress this hard enough. When you work with orchids, hygiene is of paramount. This is also why you need your alcohol or your knives, your scissors, whatever you use. Put them in the dishwasher or sterilize them properly. So I'm not going to get too technical, but on cymbidiums, because I used to pick them for the market when I was a student. The way that they would do it, they would give you a trolley and it's got a bucket of clean knives and a bucket. Every stem you cut gets a clean knife. The cymbidium has got like an enzyme. It's the quickest way to explain it, and we call it orchid AIDS. If you cut that stem or you cut that plant and you go and cut another one, or you work with it, especially with repotting, you transfer that enzyme to the other one. 9 times out of 10, it will kill your plant. It comes up in black spots all over. There's unfortunately a lot of diseases that comes on in black spots, but they increase. And basically the whole immunity of your plant just dies. That's why we call it orchid AIDS. So again, get into the habit. When you pick up your scissor, when you pick up your knife, when you pick up your tweezers, that's very important, and you're going to see now when I do the demonstration. Sterilize. And if you're only dealing with one plant, go put them in the dishwasher or pour boiling water over. It is so important because it's so easy. And if you think, plants grow, you all know it. I don't know who of you have repotted one of these and take it out and they're really stinky. And that is bacteria. Remember, if you smell something, it's bacteria. So that means everything you treat that plant with, what you're cutting, what you fiddling with, whatever you do, sterilize, sterilize, sterilize before carrying on to the next one. Right. Any more questions? Yes.
How long does can a plant last?
Phalaenopsis, 150 years. That's the record. In Kew Gardens, they actually got a few that's over 150 years old. So yes, next question is going to be, it normally in nature I only grow 1 leaf. Because of the hybrids, you can be lucky that some of them might even grow 3 leaves. But remember the rule, I basically need 4 leaves. I need enough energy to put out the flowers. There was somebody else. Yes.
When you're watering them,
Yes.
do you need to water them individually or could you put them
No. I water all mine together, and this is the important thing. When your collection, as your collection is now, make sure they're healthy. So when I bring in a new plant, so my orchid house is not set up yet, but in the UK, plants used to go what I used to call isolation ward. And I would keep, depending on the plant, anywhere between 3 and 6 months before I introduced them, because there was other diseases there I dealt with. So if your plants are healthy, you're sure there's nothing going on, by all means, let's save water. Let's be water wise. I see a lot of people that just use this, especially if they're in the garden, you don't have a choice because you can't take the plant out of the tree to water it. Then unfortunately we're not water wise, but there's tricks and about that. But you can use the same water. Sometimes I will, you'll see as they drink, you add, but then you don't waste. So that's a brilliant question. Anybody else? Yes.
How do you prune back after they've finished flowering?
Very good question. I was getting to that. So when your plant has now finished blooming, you've got that last, and this is the most important thing. Remember, when it's finished flowering, repot. But don't cut my stem. If my plant is healthy, and you can see this is a beautiful specimen. Look how strong these leaves are. So if my leaves is firm and not wrinkled and not yellow, you leave the stem well alone. When it starts going brown, till where it goes brown, you will cut above the node. Because 9 times out of 10, and even on this one, when you guys get up, you can actually feel some of the nodes is already swollen. And that's where it's going to throw out another spike. But if your plant is in stress, as a responsible plant owner, you have to make the decision. Like my little plant I got given from Woolworths when I arrived in the country, this little thing was just keep going, keep going. When after 9 months you could see it's now only got 2 flowers on, she's given me such a show. When she started to push out the other spike, I said, you've had enough. You're going to rest now. But that is, as you get more confident and you are more comfortable with your plants. And I just want to say something. These plants, I told you already, they're drama queens, but they're like children. You get the underachievers, the overachievers, and those that doesn't play by the rules at all. And you that are gardeners, you would know that. You will have a plant that breaks all the rules, and these are the same. And as you get more comfortable with your plants, and this is the one, you're going to have a sixth sense. And I just want to get back to watering, because I did say about how at the moment my Phalaenopsis is drinking once every 3 weeks. But you have to train them. But also you have to listen to your instincts. And if you are in doubt with a Phalaenopsis, wait another day or 2. That's the rule. But in summer, we go hands off because we have got such intense summer. So there we are talking every 4 to 6 to 7 days, depending on your environment. And you'll see, sorry, I'm jumping now, but this is also why the internet makes me angry. Because you will be watching a video of somebody that tells you what she does and how she waters and whatever. But look at the location. There's a lady that she is in Florida in America, and her stuff is really sound. But she sits, and I've been in Florida, I've been to orchid houses where that water comes whooshing out in that orchid house. We walk through the orchid house, by the time you're at the end and I come back, it's dry, and she grows in moss. Because she has to do everything to keep the plant as wet as possible for as long as possible. Our problem is here, especially you guys on the East Rand, you sit with the cold. So the same rule as roses. We don't want, roses don't want to sleep with wet feet. Please don't let these guys sleep with wet feet in the winter. Summer is a different story. Our temperatures are above 17 in summer. So they can handle the water, they can handle the moisture, but they can't do it now. Your plant is, if you water it now, late afternoon like now, and the temperature drop, I can guarantee you within a month, 6 weeks, those roots are going to be rotten away. Because that's what they do. Remember, they're not able to process that water, and it just sits there and it sits there and it sits there, and eventually you're going to pull your plant out and have no roots. Any more questions? Yes.
How long does it take every
There's no rules. So this is the biggest question. How do I get my Phalaenopsis to rebloom? Temperature. And this is what we do in the orchid houses. You need a definite temperature difference between the day and the night by 10 degrees. So this is why everybody's orchids look so spectacular normally from September, October, because March, April, May, June, they felt the cold and allow them to feel that cold. So on purpose, so if you're in your big grow houses, that's what they will do. They will artificially drop it from that 27 or 30 degrees to 20 degrees for 3 weeks. That's all they need. So now in your houses, if you've got a plant and it's been just sitting there and it's doing nothing, and you know it's been repotted, you know you feed them, you know you do all the things, it's getting enough light, do me a favor, go find the coldest place in your house. If it's your bathroom, for 3 weeks at night, just let them feel the cold. And I can guarantee you, and a lot of your orchids, that's actually the instigator. Even oncidiums, I'm now going to talk about oncidiums and dendrobiums that's got an active resting period. So, but also remember, if you just had a plant and it's bloomed for you for 3 or 4 months, and it's now, the spike is now gone brown, everything, allow it to rest. When we go in winter, we normally, and they're in rest, but remember, I grow through all the year, so we don't have a active rest period like some other, like your cymbidiums. We know you don't touch them now. Now it's blooming season, so you don't repot, you don't do anything. So this is what's different with them. You can do it right through the year, but allow me to feel the cold. Okay? So does that answer the question? Okay, so go find that bathroom, go find the kitchen, as long, now this is the other danger as well, where when flowers, again, remember I talked about the difference in temperature, be careful for your windows at the moment. I get a lot of bud blight, I get a lot of leaves that shows cold damage. So the old thing, pull the curtain, pull the net curtain, or just slightly move them away. But please don't let the leaf actually touch the window, because you know if you in your house and you go and it's so cold, you go touch that window, how cold is that window? This is a tropical plant. Can I just also get water? Please don't give them ice. I beg you, don't give them ice. What those poor roots do, when I do repotting, you can actually see it almost looks like the root makes a scab, and it becomes thicker and thicker, and it can't absorb water later. So the reason why it works, again, I don't throw the baby out with the bath water. The reason why it works, it limits people to give them water. So either you give them that little bit of water, but I personally, I like to put them in a basin and let them drink. I mean, wine time, people. Wine time. You can have a glass of wine while they drink. Or for those that like coffee and tea, you can do the same. But that, because I don't know, if you've got a lot of orchids, to watering day in my house is quite a big thing. But it takes me 2 days, and I've only got back to the country now. So to get them to drink, and remember, when they drink, drain. They have to stand there on the side and make sure they drain properly. And when I'm going to do the repotting now, I'm going to show you very specifically how you make sure that there's enough drainage. And we do a dual thing, because as you can see, look how big my leaves is on this one. I'm huge. So they tend to topple over. The biggest secret is at the bottom of your pot must be stones. Okay, so I'll quickly one, before I'm starting to take plants apart, another question. I can take another question or two? Yes?
I've got Phalaenopsis, and the one leaf is going a little bit yellow.
Yeah,
But it's still, it's one of the bottom leaves.
yeah.
But it's still,
So,
Can't hear the question.
okay, so what she's asked is leaves that goes yellow, and it's going at the bottom. It is a normal part of them. Normally they can go a year, 2, 3 years without ever. So normally yellowing leaves, any leaf that is wrinkled, floppy, is your traffic light system to say, please come and look at my roots, I'm going to die. So that's your first thing. Otherwise, where a root has naturally died off, that leaf will go yellow. But now again, please don't start taking leaves off. When it is really yellow or brown, by all means. If it's partially yellow, get in the habit of cutting your leaf like that or like that. So basically the reason for that, you need your plant to make food. If it can't photosynthesize, it's not going to grow new roots. It's not going to grow new leaves. Really, really important. I always say things with orchids must come away naturally in your hand, or you don't interfere. If there's severe rot or there's disease, then the rules change. Then you have to do it out of necessity. Okay? Sorry, somebody else? Yes.
Just at the air flood,
It shouldn't normally, but like now, when it is cold, you're not going to put that fan on your plants, normally. But if your plant is in a summer's day, it is, remember, they grow at 27 degrees. What is our summer temperatures here? Between 30, 35. By all means, put that fan on. As long as it's not an aircon fan. That's where the problems come in. Sorry, somebody else? Anybody else? Yeah.
Instead of that brown little plastic thing, can we stand them on pebbles?
As long as that bottom isn't in touch with it. So what you can do, I've had one client this week that I saw that's quite creative. She had a potter make her a pebble that is that big. But remember, any water that touched the bottom, it's going to drink water from the bottom and it will rot away. Right, so before I start taking plants, let's talk about medium. So this is my little thing, and then people get very angry at me. Medium currently is one of the biggest issues in the world, and everybody's trying to tell you what you need to grow your orchids in. I'm going to change the rules. So orchids need air and light, especially Phalaenopsis, on my roots. What I like to do, if you like the bark root, is I use orchid mix, which is a finer mix, with medium-sized bark, which I mix 50-50. The whole idea is to allow air and light in. But here's where it changes. When you've got there's an old saying, when you've got 10 to 20 plants, you're a hobbyist. When you've got 50 to 100 plants, it costs you money. And when you start getting more and more Phalaenopsis to repot, yes, we only repot every 2 to 3 years, it starts to cost you a lot of money. So there's alternatives. My personal favorite is Leica balls. I do not know if you know Leica balls. It's little terracotta balls. They're about yay size. They are normally very expensive. But I will give to Charlotte, I'll give you a telephone number of a guy here in Edenvale. The advantage of Leica is, okay, so there's advantages and disadvantages. First of all, you need to rinse off all the dust. And the nice thing is that it doesn't retain water, so it goes dry. So you have to water a little bit more, but you can walk to your pot and you can see it's dry or it's wet. So that's the advantage. But the advantage is the cost. But to give you an idea, in the UK, I did 3 orchid houses with roughly about 260 kilos of those balls. The nice thing is when it comes to repotting, you take the balls out, put them in a bowl, pour boiling water on, and good to go. So, because this becomes expensive when you've got a lot of pots. And this is why a lot of growers like to go to alternatives. You will see in Cymbidiums they use raw cotton or they use the moss because it is cheaper. But if you're a home grower, the newest thing that works very well, one of my clients came and showed me the success with his, is if you go up Mpumalanga way, they sell the macadamia nut shells. They work like a bomb. If you go to South America, especially Ecuador, those places, they actually use pottery shards. they take pottery, you know, terracotta pots, and they just break them up and they put them in a pot and they grow. Remember, I'm an epiphyte. This medium that you see here, okay, orchid mix has got a little bit of familiar site in, so it does add a little bit, but it's not supposed to. I'm an epiphyte. I get everything out of nature, and that's the important thing as well. Almost forgot there. Those aerial roots that you guys get, please don't cut them. That is the sign that I am the happiest, healthiest plant. They are ugly, unfortunately, but then you sit with a plant that gives you beautiful flowers. So, but that's it about medium. And I want to give you an example and prove to you. So in lockdown in the UK, as you guys were here, I couldn't get a delivery for no love or money. I had a lot of plants that needed repotting urgently. Literally, they were falling out of their pots. All I had in the garage was a TV box with polystyrene. And those 11 plants I repotted till the day that I sold my collection was standing in polystyrene. So I'm not saying it's a good thing, but what I'm saying is we need to change our idea. So there's clients that's really, really creative. Sorry.
So when do you know you need to repot them?
Okay, they're going to tell you. You're going to first of all see, when you look through your see-through pot, the first thing you're going to see, you won't see bark anymore. It's going to look like there's soil in, because your plant has used so much of the actual planting medium. It started to break down. That's your first, because now you're open for disease, you're open for a lot of things. The other thing is, you don't see plant medium, all you see is roots. It becomes so root bound that they climb out here, they start to climb over the pot. And this is why I say, your plant actually tells you. It says, please help me, please help me. And, but there's, unlike other plants, that's got a specific planting season and growing. With this one, by all means. You feel you want to repot it, okay, you don't want to repot this, we can do it in 2 weeks' time. I'm not saying that. But do repot your plants often. And remember, when your plant comes home, it's finished blooming, it is you as the plant owner. Then it changed the response. And my responsibility, and this is why we use moss, is when you get this from the supermarket, I must keep it alive there. Supermarkets in general don't water. There's the fancy black supermarket, they can water. But your sparge, those people, they don't water. So I must keep this plant alive. So your position is, the moment that you can, please take it out. Look at the roots, and I'm going to show you now how to do it. Okay. Yeah.
Sue's one that sort of splits into like 2 or 3 plants.
Okay.
Do you separate that?
No. So let's quickly talk about propagation. So I don't know if any of you have had a phalaenopsis and it suddenly comes out with a leaf here. Or like she says, it looks like you've got a second plant here. And we call that a keiki. Now keiki is the Hawaiian word for baby. And an orchid baby is a keiki. So your plant has made a baby. Now what's going to happen? Your mother plant is feeding those babies. And we call it the rule of 3. I want to see 3 leaves and at least 3 roots, and if in any way possible 3 inches. That the plant is like that size. What you can do then, if it is at the bottom, you will have to repot and lay your plant down. Sometimes it takes a very sharp, clean blade to separate them. Make sure that they've got enough roots. If it's on the top, because by then the flower will be gone, it's quite easy. If the keiki sits here, you just cut and you put the little stem with the new baby plant, you put down onto your growing medium, and it should be getting going. And then you start watering. But except if your plant dies, and this is the other thing that you will see, that little baby plants will be so healthy, but as time goes on, that mother plant will start looking very sad. And it's a seesaw thing. You need to watch it, because what happened at one point, she's fed that baby, and then she's going to turn around and start taking the power back, and then you're going to lose both. So it is that point. So if you've got 3 leaves, if you've got 3 roots, the little plant looks strong enough. Just plant it in a smaller pot and it's happy. They self-propagate. So just quick, because I get a quick question about this all the time. How do they reproduce sexually? So that is through seed. And for you that are lucky enough to travel to the Far East or to Spain, every street seller at some point is going to try and sell you orchid seed. Please rather go for the sunset cruise and leave that. It is highly specialized. In nature, when it happens, 99% of the time it fails in nature. So what we do is in the big orchid houses, and it's unfortunately not really done yet. There is 1 or 2 growers that does it privately. So what they do is they, like what insects would do in nature, they do it by hand. And it can take 6-7 months for this seed to develop, and it normally develops here behind the flower. That little seeds are then taken into a lab, and they got a special growing medium. Now, what people don't know, and this is why it's so difficult, that little seed is so tiny. 1 seed pot can have over 1 million seeds. But that little seed needs a fungus. And in nature, that fungus occurs naturally in the jungle. We have to substitute it in a laboratory because it can't photosynthesize. And your cymbidiums, interesting enough, they grow in the dark, the seeds. These guys grow in the light. So, and I don't know if ever of you heard about orchid flasks. So this is when those little seeds that's taken sometimes a year, sometimes more, is now finally starting to become green. So in Europe you can buy a flask with thousands of little green plants, but that plant can take 2 years living off the fungus before it's able to photosynthesize. And this is why the only way you guys can propagate your plant is self-propagation. And you'll see on the internet, and it works, but remember, you give up your plant, is that they open up this little node here and they put keiki paste on. Now keiki paste is like a hormone paste, and it activates the plant to start growing there. So yes, you guys can play with it, but remember, you have the chance to lose the plant. Okay, very good question. Anybody else?
Do you put that baby plant, do you actually put it in the soil or do you just put it on top?
Depending on how small it is, but if your plant's about that size, you're just going to use a smaller pot, same conditions, same watering, same feeding schedule, everything. But you sort of let that roots that was aerial, you just let them touch. Sometimes you will have to use a little kebab stick or something to stabilize them, if you know what I mean, just to keep them there. I've had to get very creative in the past where you take your pot almost like this and then make a hole and actually put it through there, put the medium in, and just to stabilize them. And normally within 6 months or so, they root themselves, they're happy.
Should you plant them in see-through pots?
Phalaenopsis, yes.
Always.
Always. Remember, I photosynthesize through my roots and my leaves. And if you want to make them really happy, those of you that's got a glue gun, or those that can lay their hands on a soldering iron, please make more holes. They love it. They love it that, and not only that, then you know you're not going to struggle with rotten roots because the water is able to drain out. So I normally make an extra one at the bottom as well, but just a few, and please work outside. It stinks to high heaven. Plastic burning is never nice. So I don't want anybody to have, chest problems afterwards.
So that when you repot like violet, you're supposed to go the next size up or something?
No.
Can you go to...
No, you can't go too big, then they rot. Remember, I cling to a tree. I like to be root bound. I like to be tight. And you're going to see, I'm going to take this plant out now, and I suspect that my pot might be slightly bigger, but don't go too big. sometimes when you've got huge leaves on a pot, you might have to go. Then what I suggest is you just use more stones. So you're going to see, this is now a marvelous orchid plant. So we've got 2 pots in one. So because they grow in their see-through pots, and then when we sell them, we put them in a pot, and there's some stones at the bottom so they don't fall over. Okay. So what you're going to do is you take your plant firmly, and I'm going to invite half of the group. If we start from the back, if you want to come forward, and I'm just going to show you how I treat root rot and how to look for things.